Write that down for me, Saito. Write that down for me, Saito. Write that. Write that. Write that. Write that. Write that down for me, Saito. Write that. Write that down for me, Saito. Write that down for me, Saito.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Write That Down. I'm your host, Justin Knipper. I edit for FightGameMedia.com. I'm a staff writer at WrestlingObserver.com, F4WOnline.com, and shortly I'll be joined by author and historian and broadcast journalist, the boss, the oracle of Japanese professional wrestling himself, Mr. Fumi Saito. But, okay, so we did it. Everyone, we made it to part 5 of our Antonio Inoki Legacy series. The final chapters today. It's a bit longer than usual. Altogether, you should have between something like 6 or 7 hours of podcast, all things devoted to Inoki, Antonio Inoki, by the time you're done listening to all these, if you have. And again, thank you everyone for listening. We've gotten probably the most feedback ever on these Antonio Inoki shows that we've done over the past month or so. A little over a month, actually. So thank you again for the kind words, and please keep listening. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, also, if you haven't already subscribed to the Fight Game Media Network's free podcast feed, please do us a favor and help us out. Subscribe to the feed wherever you usually download your podcasts. If it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Downcast, Stitcher, wherever. If you subscribe, it really helps us out. It really does help us out at Write That Down. It helps us out at Fight Game Media. It's very much appreciated. 日本のリスナーの皆さん、いつも英語で来てくださってありがとうございます。日本語でなくて申し訳ありません。もしもよろしかったら、Spotify, Apple, Downcast などのご利用のプラットフォームでファイゲームメディアネットワークをごと古くいただけると助かります。ありがとうございます。Alright, so back to Antonio Inoki. We went over so much last time about Antonio Inoki's career from the 1980s onward to his retirement and his life in business, in Japanese national politics. This week, we hit on a lot of both inside the ring and outside the ring topics like Inoki and, again, the rise of this MMA culture that would blossom in the 90s. We talked about his fights with Riska and Willie Williams, Chuck Wepner. We talked about later on his very important, pretty famous feud with his disciple Tatsumi Fujinami, the Dragon. We talked about the debut of Big Van Vader and the debacle of debut that was at Yogoku Sumo Hall in 1987 with Beat Takeshi and flying pillows and fire. That's towards the end of the show. We talk about Inoki and Vader. We talked about how important the launch of the second UWF was and its massive impact on pro wrestling, the way we still feel today. We touched on Naoya Ogawa and late into late 90s, early 2000s, the real rise of MMA, Inoki kind of turning his back on professional wrestling, becoming the quote-unquote enemy. I'm not even scratching this. There's a lot more than just what I listed, but listen today. This is our last final chapter on Inoki. Questions, comments, anything you got, send them to us. I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper, on Twitter. So then sit back, enjoy the ride, and next week we're going to start one more time on the other side of the story from Inoki. We're going to start with Shohei Baba, Giant Baba, part 1 of his legacy series, a very different but also very important figure in Inoki's career, in the history of Japanese pro wrestling. And if you are interested at all in All Japan Pro Wrestling, hop on board next week, because this will be the series for you. Absolutely everything that you probably need to know or want to know, we're going to try to hit it in the Baba series next week. Okay? So let's get right into it.
All the way to, The Bob Backlund thing, we covered in details in the last time.
Hogan.
Hulk Hogan and IWGP concept.
Hmm. And the
Yeah.
controversy when he lost the match
Right.
with Hogan and the newspaper reaction to it.
And also 1980. Okay, are we recording? Yeah.
Yes, we are on.
Yeah.
We're live,
And-
pal.
Okay. So you have to edit some of that, some of the content first. But
No, it's okay.
okay, in 1983, the first inaugural IWGP tournament, Hulk Hogan beat Anthony Inoki to be the first winner of the tournament, and actually wore that physical, first original IWGP belt around his waist. Yeah, and but wasn't the championship to defend, to defend the title. The championship won't be held until next spring again. And the second annual 1984 second annual IWGP tournament, the final was again Inoki against Hogan. Yeah, we covered that last time. And but we kind of skipped the fact that the 1983 New Japan Company as a whole almost went down. There was like almost like a coup, coup d'état within the company. That around that time period, Inoki had a big, huge outside wrestling project in Brazil. It's called Anton Heisel. It's basically an energy save the world project that cow poop. Okay, you feed in Brazil. You feed the whole farm, cows and the livestock, with your sugar cane, the special sugar cane, and you use the cow poops and make it into energy and recycle it, and that was going to change either oil or that the natural gas something, and that the whole energy cycle would be changed in this world. It was a big, huge project. Pitched so many millions and millions, billions of dollars into the project. While
Heisel?
Heisel, yeah.
Heisel.
Yeah, in katakana, it's Anton Heisel.
I see. Okay. And Antonio's Heisel. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was his project that to pitch, so much money into Brazil and Brazilian government. See, Inoki felt that Brazil was his second home. Naturally, yes, he moved to Brazil when he was young, like age of 13, 14, and spent his 3 or 4 years there until he was discovered by Ricky Dozan and brought back to Japan. So his life's been very dramatic since that point. But yes, he wanted to do something about it in Brazilian energy problems, and he wanted to save the world with that project. And the one scientist he met in Japan was able to do this recycling thing with cow to sugar cane to make it into a recycled energy, and you cycle, you have the certain cycle permanently. Therefore, that the new energy will replace oil or natural gas, and also you can drive a car with it or something. I
Pretty
mean, like a dream project, huh?
lofty ideas from Antonio Inoki wanting to invest a lot of money into renewable energy and new power sources. But where the hell is he getting the money?
It was a New Japan company, and the business at the time was booming. Was Inoki, IWGP, itself, and Ricky Choshu against Fujinami initial program, and Tiger Mask booming, and they were running the 250 to 300 shows a year, every single show being sold. So they must have been making over 100 grand a night times 250 nights a year, right?
There's a lot of money coming in.
Yeah, and also TV Asahi rights money, that every year, and when but the wrestlers felt that the business booming and every night's being sold out, and they never got raised in the contract guarantee, and what's happening with this company. And when somebody went into account that there's no money in the bank, and somebody confronted Inoki and his manager, Hisashi Shima, and then there was like a small coup d'état in summer of 1983 that the wrestler won't be appearing if you don't resign, and Inoki and Vice Presidents Seiji Sakaguchi and Hisashi Shima all resigned at the moment, and he replaced the president and the vice president and the executive officer's position with somebody else for like a 6 months period to rebuild the company. And well, Inoki won't be leaving, so he just became wrestler for a while. But he went back to president shortly after, and that led to the formation of the very first UWF. We skipped a lot of details there though, but make New Japan into two different bus, and two buses are running simultaneously. New Japan bus and UWF bus. Split the company into two groups, kind of thing.
Well, we covered a lot of that in our UWF series last year.
Mhm.
So for
Mhm.
details on that, you can look in the archives for us talking about that. But we there are a
And
lot more
also in
details
Japan,
too.
the books been written about this subject.
Pretty popular books. The what's the 1984 UWF book with Tiger
Yeah, that
Mask
too.
on it?
And after that, yeah, that book was popular, but the detail was so sketchy and a lot of information was not accurate. So other writers and even wrestlers like Akira Maeda, they all start writing books on the same subject, and a dozen book came out to answer that after that.
So there's a
Because UWF has always been very interesting subject, because much like IWGP, that 1980s wrestling fan into early 90s, they all believed that the UWF was going to change wrestling and make wrestling into legitimate contest. It's always been a dream of wrestling fan kid, right? Wish this was all real. And because you believe it as a kid, it's all real, and you find out that there is no Santa Claus. But some wrestling fans choose to follow wrestling as it is, and you love the wrestling like you and I do. And at the same time, you kind of always wonder that what if wrestling was a legitimate contest? Who would be the champion? I
mhm,
mean, like a kid's dream.
mm.
And UWF really tried to change wrestling into a contest, a legitimate form, and started by changing the format and changing the style of wrestling in that ring. You stop bouncing off the rope. Stop fighting outside the ring. You cut off all the silly moves that the two wrestlers are obviously that helping each other to make the wrestling move happen. So it's like, if wrestling was real, wouldn't you kick first instead of
Mhm.
lock up? Or is does headlock really work like it was believed it would? Or you introduce all the Carl Gotch dojo moves into actual matches, that those the Achilles tendons hold, that the knee locks, that the wakigatame, that or your old-fashioned double wrist lock thing that can break your shoulder, dislocate your shoulder. Why wouldn't this dislocating shoulder thing happen in professional wrestling thing? Oh, they must not put a pressure on it or something. It's just, there's a lot of study have done because the UWF started using those dojo hidden moves and made it public. And that really, it changed a lot about wrestling. And ultimately, that led to the formation of more MMA-ish company like Pancras. And Pancras, and UFC in America pretty much started around the same time in 1994. So that the MMA, and before there was a term MMA, they used to call it what, the no holds barred. That sounds
Mhm.
barbaric, but
NHB.
hmm. So if the fight was such that that's what's gonna look like, and the MMA thing really, took off, and it's already been 25 years. And UFC now looks like a different kind of kickboxing. They don't even you don't even have much of a grappling in UFC anymore, right? A lot of
It's
punching
evolved. It's different.
evolved.
It's that and pro wrestling went different ways, but around 20 years ago, they were kind of still living
Oh,
in the
because of
same
Link,
world.
because there was a people like Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn, that the other guys that were used to be pro wrestler, went into UFC and fought, or
Mhm.
the different era, that the people like Don Frye, who was UFC champion, who became pro wrestler after.
Sure.
And yeah, so there was like people come and go back and forth, and there was a link, but there's no link after. Link I'm talking about is the professional wrestling and the MMA. But last person probably was Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, I mean, there's always crossover today, but it's not as cut and dried like it used
Yeah,
to
and then
be.
it also have to be like a major player.
Right.
Yeah, because Brock Lesnar is still very, very believable today because of UFC, huh?
It's a big part. It's a big part of who he
Yeah, yeah. I
is.
mean, Brock Lesnar's image to it, and also people even today wonder what if Goldberg ever went into UFC and MMA,
Mhm.
which never happened. But Goldberg is like a candidate. If he goes in there, he would beat everybody, something like that. And all of a sudden he's 50 something, and probably not gonna happen now.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
But anyhow, those are the things that Inoki wasn't that directly involved, but the Inoki's legacy has influence on the whole MMA evolution thing too. Agree?
Sure. I mean, it's hard not to say that his fight with Muhammad Ali was one of the first MMA fights, MMA matches that we saw.
Yeah, and
I mean,
that became in Japan that became a series of mixed fight, like your Inoki against Chuck Wepner, that another boxer, or the Monster Man kickboxing champion from America, the judoka, the karate fighters. That the Inoki had a series of total of 15 MMA fight, like in professional wrestling ring. I shouldn't probably say MMA because it was more of a professional wrestling boundary, if you know what I mean.
mhm.
But that was like not all Japan and Baba would do.
Right.
Professional wrestler against a fighter from another sport.
I mean, in the end, it was pro wrestling, but he was bringing in legitimate, successful martial artists from around the world. Ruska, the judoka, Willie Williams, karate
Kokushin
master.
karate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There were a
Chuck
number.
Wepner, like I
Chuck
said.
Wepner.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And another German boxer, Paul Berger, somebody like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. So, regardless of what happened in the ring, there was always that atmosphere or feeling of it's got to be real. It's got to, because they're real. And Inoki proves that he's real.
Point is Inoki beat them all,
Right.
And also when Inoki had this, like all through 70s into like a 80, that when Inoki had this pro wrestler against karate fighter or the kickboxer or such, that was on primetime special, separate from your weekly pro wrestling program. See that they did that for 90-minute or 2-hour primetime special on TV Asahi on different night, like your boxing fight. Then you still had the every Friday night 8 o'clock wrestling show at the same time. So they treat the MMA or the mixed fight matches separately. Therefore, people felt a different aura to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen video where they even have the fans stand on their feet, and each fighter gets their national anthem played before the fight.
Title, yeah, right.
There's
And you
usually
bring in your second with your white towel around your neck, and they don't just come in, but the whole entourage came in, right? Much
and you
like
had
boxing fight.
somebody
Yeah.
official read the rules or the stipulations. It was all ceremony and tradition, just like you would see in any other sport. Down from the beginning, not just of the matches, but to the beginning of the television program.
Yeah, and they used a different ring and different color mat. Yeah.
It was very ceremonial,
And
ceremonious.
and made sure that they didn't look, they didn't want that to look like another wrestling night.
It was special. It was a big time.
And also that New Japan and Inoki got the network special that you write money, right, from each one of those MMA fight for 5-year period. That's how Inoki and New Japan paid back the money he owed, from Muhammad Ali fight. They basically TV Asahi loaned New Japan and Inoki that $6 million, to make Muhammad Ali fight, happen. And New Japan, and Inoki owed TV Asahi good chunk of money, because of it. And then he paid back by having those 10, 15, another one of those special fight. And rating was high and got big advertising money. And TV Asahi, New Japan, Inoki, win-win-win situation. It was solved in over 3-year period or so. So all the money that the TV Asahi had to spend on Muhammad Ali fight was paid back eventually. Yeah.
Not many people could do that as on their own or as a draw like Antonio Inoki, I don't think. That's a lot of money, a lot of popularity.
Yeah. And $6 million in 1970s? Oh my gosh, right? What would that be in today's money? 100 million?
Yeah, I'm going to check. Let's see.
At least 10 times.
At least it's a big difference.
Inflated. Yeah. But last time we were here, that we talked about Bob Backlund and the WWE title change controversy and how they handled it in Rio, and also a storyline thing that the Inoki didn't lose the title, but relinquished the title. Therefore, he's no longer a WWE champion, but he never lost it. But in WWE record, Inoki's name doesn't appear. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. It was wiped from the record, kind of
thing, and never happened. It's usually that at the end of the tour, just like Giant Baba winning a title from Hardy Race, become NW champion for a week. At the end of the tour, with no television, but at some house shows, that Giant Baba drops the title back to Hardy Race. And Inoki probably was going to lose the title back to Bob Backlund, but he didn't do it. Instead, he did the very controversial ending to the match and DQ finish. And Inoki not being happy, storyline goes that he's going to return the title. And oh, wow, what a man, right? Yeah.
And by the way, $6 million in 1976 was around $29 million in today's money.
Okay.
Quite a lot.
But those
still.
money had to be paid back. Yeah, right.
Yeah, 29 million. It's not chump change.
Right. But still, a lot of money.
Money.
And then the wrestling company can go down,
For sure.
Yeah. But the IWGP thing, that after WWE title switch thing, but the business partnership between New Japan and WWE, it remained another 5 years from that point. And 1980, there was a Madison Square Garden tag team tournaments every December. And first year, it had to be 1980 then. Inoki and Bob Backlund became tag team and won the first annual Madison Square Garden tag team tournament. And second year on, that 82 and 83 then probably second year, Andre the Giant and Rene Goulet won. And 82 and 83, then babyface in Japan, Hulk Hogan and Inoki made a tag team in 82 and 83. They won the championship. I mean, the tag team tournament. So Hulk Hogan, we talked about it last week that Hulk Hogan was huge superstar in Japan before he was huge phenomenon in America.
And he was a big,
but he was big star in AWA. AWA 2 at the time.
But if we can see footage of Hogan in Japan, some of those crowds, they're really, really crazy for Hogan. He was loved at one point.
Yeah, of course. And also
Really
he
strong.
he turned babyface real, I mean, like a perfect timing. I mean, right after Stan Hansen jumped from New Japan to All Japan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Up until 1981, when Stan Hansen and Hulk Hogan made a occasional tag team partner in Japan, that clearly Stan Hansen was above Hulk Hogan at the time. But just as soon as Hulk Hogan left New Japan, he signed new contract with, Hulk Hogan signed new contract with New Japan and turned himself babyface and made tag team with Inoki and Fujinami, and therefore wearing kimono and the Ichiban trunks and all that. Therefore, Ultimate Babyface was born.
Now, if we fast forward a little bit, because there was a
Sure.
point where Hogan, his time came to an end in Japan because he signed a contract exclusively with WWF, and we know what
The
happened
yellow
from
trunks
there.
and yellow boots. Yeah.
Hulkamania was born in 1984, and the rest in that case was history. But
Yeah,
it unfortunately was away from
but
Japan.
until like 84 in June of 85 to be exact, the Hogan was still making trips to Japan to make New Japan dates while
Mhm.
he was Hulkamania in America. That was
Mhm.
amazing.
While he was champion.
While he was champion, the first year and a year and a half, right? That he was defending title all over America with yellow trunks, 1, 2, 3, 3 punches, big boot, and a leg drop finish, right? But when he comes to Japan, he still works like Japanese wrestler. Lock
Mhm.
up to your headlock, headlock into your hammerlock to your takedown onto the mat, and then doing the face lock, the chin lock, the chancellor, like you wrestle like a Japanese wrestler. And that's the element that those are the parts that American fans don't really know about.
He had a different finish too.
Yeah, leg drop wasn't. He was an axe bomber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It
Also,
was
he inherited from Hulk Hogan. I mean, Stan Hansen's lariat that nobody kicks out of, right?
mm.
That he had the axe bomber, very similar to your Stan Hansen clothesline lariat, and he beat everybody with that. And recently, TV Asahi channel on Sky Perfect TV, they aired young Akira Maeda against Hulk Hogan single match. It was interesting. Hulk Hogan against Akira Maeda of rings.
That's really
They,
dichotomy. That's A versus B. It's a yin versus yang of pro wrestling styles. Complete, both representatives of traditional North American pro wrestling versus quote unquote realistic Carl Gotch inspired pro wrestling from Japan.
and evolved into MMA later on.
Yeah, rings and
But
Maeda became
when
MMA.
when this Hulk Hogan Akira Maeda single match happened, it was back in 1983, and Hulk Hogan was still the 29, and Akira Maeda being 25 or something, and so it was young, and the finish was sure enough Axe Bomber.
Hmm.
And 1983 Hulk Hogan pinned 1983 Akira Maeda in professional wrestling manner. But the match, in hindsight, when you watch it, that Maeda was becoming Akira Maeda, and Hulk Hogan had this thing that there's a clear difference, and a little bit of hesitation in the ring, and a little bit of miscommunication in the ring. But at the end of the day, it was New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was still interesting to watch, though. Yeah. And that was the night Fujinami pinned Anthony Inoki with his full Nelson Dragon Suplex 1, 2, 3 to win the tag team tournament. And at the end of the night, he was so happy that they didn't really talk about Brody anymore. Brilliant finish, huh?
Really, geez, this is a big moment, a time for Tatsumi Fujinami too, who was sort of becoming he was a
His own
junior heavyweight
star,
before, yeah, and he was becoming more like a
yeah, and there
heavyweight
was
star.
yeah, and also he just turned heavyweight just a couple of years back, and having a 10 important single match against people like Dick Murdoch, the Masked Superstar, the Andre the Giant, the Hulk Hogan, in the single match program as a heavyweight, But it's a trivia, it's kind of trivia question, but that was the night, the only match ever the Fujinami pinned Inoki 1, 2, 3. For the record, Inoki Fujinami single match happened the 15, 20 times? Not once Fujinami beat Inoki.
There were
It's,
draws. That was the closest he came.
yeah. Close, right. Whereas Riki Choshu pinned Inoki 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring with no excuse in 3 different occasions. Riki Choshu, yeah. And when Inoki left wrestling, the booking job that the executive producer position was given to Choshu instead of Fujinami. That was a record, yes. But I guess Riki Choshu was more of a locker room leader than his own person, Fujinami type. Fujinami is friendly, but he was never that much of a boss type. In a dressing room. Whereas Riki Choshu can put together a pretty good team because he come from college sport background. That the dressing rooms are all fraternity friends, and Riki Choshu was a boss type. And I guess Inoki saw through that and made Riki Choshu booker. Yeah. Anyhow,
Fujinami was more of like a
that
soldier for
on his
the
own
company.
and individual star. Yeah, but never had his entourage or something. Yeah.
And his
He-
career as a
Rick-
junior it's very different. You have to look at it a little differently because he was just a different type of wrestler. He was a different kind of wrestler as a junior,
Mhm.
especially early on. He became more of a Antonio Inoki style heavyweight pro wrestler in his later.
Yeah. We'll get to that. I'll get to that in about 10 minutes. But
Yeah.
the Fujinami pinning Antonio Inoki was Dragon Suplex hold.
Big deal.
Not German suplex, but the full Nelson Dragon Suplex, and pinned Inoki with no excuse 1, 2, 3 to win the tournament. Such a happy finale for first annual IWGP Tag Team Tournament, and the magazine covered it. Tokyo Sports covered it. Nikkan Sports all had the big photo spread that made Brody leaving the company news a little bit smaller portion. Yeah. But on Brody came back to Japan one more time in the following summer of '86. When you ask him, but Bruiser Brody came back to Japan to collect money. He didn't get paid. When he left the company, the bullet train, and he took his own, flight back home, he did not get paid on that tour. So Brody came back to New Japan summer of 1986 to collect all the money he felt he owed. He was owed. That was the time they had single match. He came back with two matches only. Fujinami against Brody and Inoki against Brody. That Inoki against Brody was a 6-minute time on Broadway. And probably New Japan felt that it was the beginning of second, like a second state, second chapter of Inoki Brody. But in Brody's mind, he came back to finish business with New Japan. Very interesting.
Was he paid in full in the end?
I guess, yeah. He came back and collected his was said around 100,000.
Wow.
One tour.
Back then is a lot of money still.
Yeah, 1 week, stay, and he made like 100 grand. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I don't know anybody who currently would make something like that. Maybe Brock Lesnar, but I don't even know. Different
that
business.
was the Hulk Hogan money for the Tokyo Dome show. Like several years later, right between WWE and WCW Jump, Hulk Hogan worked for New Japan for about 1 year. Remember, like in 92, 91, his guarantee was 100,000. A dome match. One match though. That's a lot of money for one.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyhow, well, we're talking about Inoki now. That 86, yeah, was such that the Inoki was still active. That the first version of UWF, Maeda, the Takada, the Fujiwara, the Yamazaki Kido, that they after the first version of UWF went down, that the team UWF came back to New Japan and worked 2 years, 86 and 87. That was the time that the very anticipated single match was Inoki against Akira Maeda, right? That never took place.
Right.
They did have Fujinami against Maeda, Inoki against Fujiwara, clean finish, but they never did the Inoki against Maeda match.
Any
And
particular reason?
was they couldn't come up with finish, right?
Oh.
Probably
Huh.
Maeda wouldn't do it anymore, and Inoki said he cannot do it. So that match never took place. But recently, as recent as last year, Inoki, 40 years later, the Inoki and Maeda had the magazine interview together. I mean, like as recent as last year, so like 35 years later, right? Inoki admitted, I was scared of you. Because,
Really? Is it true or is it just for the magazine?
Inoki gotten old enough to admit that, because back in 86, you have no idea Maeda would do you in the ring. Once you get in the ring, once you got in the ring, you can't really, protect yourself anymore, right?
I mean, yeah, it was a different time too. It wasn't an MMA time where people had general training outside of pro wrestling. There was that because we didn't know there was an era of danger.
Yeah, but the
that-
86, 87 version of Akira Maeda quit all the pro wrestling moves. In pro wrestling ring, he was doing a kicks to submission and kick and submission, suplex. That's it. Kick, suplex, submission. Kick, suplex, submission. That's it.
slap.
Oh yeah.
Maybe elbow.
Little bit, but the more of a thrust to the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kick to the leg and take
Mhm.
you down on the mat. And we'll give you a couple suplexes to give you damage. And
Mhm.
on the mat, they're gonna, go into your joint.
Mhm.
I mean, either arm or just elbow or shoulder joint or Achilles tendon or the knee. I mean, you gotta submit kind of thing. But it's a pro wrestling boundary, so at the end of the night, it was all pro wrestling. But the Maeda and his people stopped doing all the traditional wrestling moves. Like they never bounced off the ropes after that. See, bouncing off the rope is always a big issue in wrestling discussion, right? In your country, my country, in school, why would wrestler come right back at you, right? Was there discussion when you were a kid too?
I mean, a little bit, but I don't think as much as it is or was in Japan. I think there was so much more outrageous pro wrestling content going on. But when I was a kid, that running off the ropes wasn't the problem. It was more like, who is this Repo Man guy and why does he have tire prints on his tights?
Right.
They pushed the reality aspect far, far, far aside long ago. I mean,
long ago, yeah, maybe after Mr. T too.
That was always one thing that was so appealing as a fan from here in the States is that Japanese style kept the realism, the sense of realism.
And believability.
Believability,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's aspects all throughout history over here, but there's an obvious difference.
Yeah. And Japanese wrestling always kept it and made it like a competition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier about the Inoki specials where he would face off against martial artists and they would present it from the beginning of the program to the end as as late
as 1986. Yeah, we forgot to mention Inoki against Leon Spinks.
Oh, that was I mean, people with big names.
Yeah, And Leon
Boxers.
Spinks, by 1986, the Leon Spinks was not really famous boxer, but still former heavyweight champion, right?
In Inoki's case, it looked good.
Yeah, and then also that the match wasn't well received, and the night that saved the show was Akira Maeda against Don Nakaya Nielsen.
Oh, that was a famous
Uh,
match.
Oh,
Famous
serious
one.
kickboxer. Yeah, that was the same night. Double main event, double feature. Inoki against Leon Spinks won, and another main event was Akira Maeda against Don Nakaya Nielsen. That relatively unknown kickboxer. Put on great fight, huh?
Still,
I mean, people should
what a
go out of
crowd
their way
too.
to watch this one. Yeah, because that made Akira Maeda even more, believable fighter. And he had Korogach at his corner, and that was real good too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you've never seen a match with Mr. Maeda, I think it's
Akira Maeda against
it's
Don
just
Nakaya Nielsen, 1986 fight.
yeah. If you're gonna
It
watch
was
one,
like it's still pro wrestling,
mhm.
but there's no no hole in it. It looked like martial arts fight. Yeah. And during the match, Akira Maeda had a real concussion too, but he kept on and he went right to hospital after that. Yeah.
There was you can watch it now with 2022 eyes, and it doesn't look that outdated. I mean, there's
And also, yeah, Don Nakanishi said nothing pro wrestling about him. That
no,
he fought like kickboxer, and
yeah.
Maeda stood there and took all the kicks. Yeah.
So
And put him in a very believable fashion, Boston Crab to finish the match. So that was the only way or something. And it was a great match, though. I mean, people should go out of their way to watch this Maeda Don Nakaya Nielsen fight. Yeah, and then also Nielsen became pretty famous, and he had quite a few other MMA fight in pro wrestling ring. Against Fujiwara, against quite a few guys. Yes.
I think he passed away a
Not
few
just
years ago.
right, and he became a chiropractor doctor, and he was living in Thailand. Yeah, right. He's no longer with us. He kind of died young. Yeah,
Yeah,
relatively young.
it
Yeah.
was a special night for Maeda, but it was also a pretty interesting night for Inoki, who had the fight with Spinks, Leon Spinks.
Leon Spinks. Right,
Not
right,
as
right.
I can't go out of my way to say, hey, I recommend this, but
Not this one. Yeah, but there are better ones because
the idea of realism and UWF and Maeda, this aspect of pro wrestling was becoming so much more of the style of that time, later 80s into the early 90s, especially when the second UWF boom happened in
right, right.
88, 89.
Hmm.
There also around this time, there was a huge match that Inoki had with Big Van Vader,
It was 87, December of
87.
87. Yeah.
So right around this time, yeah,
December,
Sumo Hall.
87 was the year that Maeda and his UWF guys worked with New Japan for the final time, and that famous kick to the face thing happened in November of 1987. That was a six-man tag team: Maeda, Takada, Osamu Kido against Riki Choshu, Masa Saito, and Hiro Saito. When when Riki Choshu put a famous Scorpion Deathlock on Kido, uh, Maeda walked in the ring and then just simply kicked Maeda's face. I mean, Riki Choshu's face with no reasoning. Face got swollen up, and that something really happened that night, and that was the last time Maeda ever worked in New Japan. And shortly after that, Sakaguchi fired Maeda. That led to the formation of second UWF the following spring. Spring of '88, second version of UWF started. But New Japan remained with everybody in it. Inoki, Fujinami, Sakaguchi in it, Riki Choshu, Masa Saito, the Kobayashi, all the Riki Choshu's guys in it, and American crew in it, and no more business partnership with WWE. So Inoki in New Japan signed a partnership deal with Von Erich's World Class, right? And Bill Watts, the MSWA, Mid South Wrestling Association, and a little bit later on, that ironically they changed the name to UWF, American UWF, right? Bill Watts. And also the wrestlers were brought in from all kinds of different places. No more WWE wrestler, but they created new stars, and they brought in people like King Bundy, but he was taken by WWE right away. And Konga the Barbarian, Hacksaw Higgins, and Kerry Von Erich and Kevin Von Erich made freaking tours. Jim Duggan came over a few times, but they had to create new monster American star. And Masa Saito had Brad Reagan's train Leon White to make it into Japanese style wrestler. Therefore, Big Van Vader was born.
Mm-hmm. And
To make long story short, yeah.
But he didn't go immediately to New Japan, did he? He went with AWA, and he went with what was it?
He was already with the
Germany
AWA
too.
at the yeah. He was at the time he was already working during the '87 tour. Leon White was already working for Otto Vance as a Bull Power.
Full power. Yep.
Yeah, and Otto Vance loved him and then gave him championship and everything. But Leon White pretty much gave up all these European dates and signed exclusive contracts with New Japan and became Big Van Vader. And thereafter, he became huge superstar in Japan. And the debut night of Big Van Vader was Takeshi Pro Wrestling Gundan. The beat Takeshi, Takeshi Kitano, one of the biggest comedians in Japan. That there was a storyline that Takeshi formed a wrestling group called TPG, the Takeshi Pro Wrestling Gundan. That they found a lethal weapon called Big Van Vader, and Masa Saito brought him in from Europe. And the storyline was such. And December 27th of 1987, his debut night, the single match against Inoki, Big Van Vader beat Anthony Inoki 1-2-3 clean in the middle of the ring in 2 minutes. Oh my gosh. That was one of the last riot the New Japan fan made, because that the main event initially announced that night was Inoki against Riki Choshu. And people believed that was the night finally Riki Choshu was going to beat Inoki 1-3 in the middle of the ring with clothesline. And people made scene, and then they started rioting in the middle of the night, during the show. New Japan switched card a couple times. So they ended up doing Inoki against Choshu, then Inoki against Vader the same night. I mean, chaotic, right?
Mm-hmm. And the Vader match was pretty short too, right?
Yeah, because people didn't want to see it. That the people rioted. So New Japan switched the card even in the middle of the night. Right. We're doing Inoki against Choshu, right? So Inoki Choshu single match happened, but they went right into DQ finish in about 10 minutes. Oh, people weren't happy, right? Then they brought the Big Van Vader over, and the tired Inoki had to go through another single match and power slam, two power slam or something, and Inoki got pinned right away. Then people got real mad. It's not what we came to see, right? Who is Big Van Vader? That was Big Van Vader's debut night. It wasn't established. See, in 2-3 year period, he became so good. I mean, the best big man worker in the ring, in the business, period. But the debut night of Big Van Vader, nobody really bought him. You know what I mean? Just, who is this guy? And it came in with this, this costume is good, but I mean, relatively new guy, just big guy, and the match wasn't even that good, and Inoki got beat in 2 minutes. People cannot leave the building. Therefore, they start the fire.
The pillows started flying into the ring.
They put a fire in the stand. Yeah.
So the fans started a fire.
Yeah, I mean, actual fire. And Sumo Association got so mad that the New Japan couldn't use the building next 2 year period. Yeah.
So next time anybody says anything about Japanese crowds being polite and quiet, remember this. Remember this.
But always Inoki, though.
Mm-hmm.
Giant Baba's Old Japan never had that kind of fanfare. I mean, like that kind of attitude, Inoki's fans had this such high expectation and a creative result, or wanting Inoki to win, or just not liking what they're seeing. They get so angry. I mean, the first IWGP tournament, second year of 1984, the second annual IWGP tournament. Again, Inoki against Hogan, Riki Choshu and Masa Saito run in. Inoki beats Hulk Hogan for count out finish. All people got mad and they just start throwing things and destroying things in the building. And right, Japanese fans are not that polite sometimes.
Not if you mess with the wrestling.
Or mess with something you believed in so much. How's that?
And I mean, this idea of messing with something that you believe in is something, this theme is something that keeps coming up over the next maybe 10 or 15 years from now.
Yeah, because Inoki was such a believable hero to them for at least decade and a half, right? At that point. Yeah.
So things were definitely changing, but this was also around this is when Inoki was sort of finishing off his first
Yes, slowing down.
in-ring. Yeah.
And with that circumstance of that during 1987, if Inoki Akira Maeda single match took place, probably Maeda had to be the winner, huh? I mean, an expectation. And aging Inoki with beat up body and heavy, serious diabetic and in the medication and all these situation and other things that he's Inoki's doing outside the ring. I mean, he always had other business, like you said about the Tabasco sauce and the churrasco, the Brazilian restaurants and Inoki Anton Heisel. And Inoki always had different venture business outside wrestling. Eventually, he became politician. Of course, he was going to. And yes, 1987, Inoki, in the ring wasn't as believable as what Antonio Inoki was 10 years before that. How's that? Yeah. But the 1987 was pretty much the final year that the Inoki was in the main event. And he had his best opponent in Masa Saito. In 1987, much like, Bruiser Brody's program, that Inoki and Masa Saito returning from America. See, it was big year, huge year for Masa Saito. Coming back from America, where he spent 20 years, after Tokyo Pro Wrestling, if you remember, 1966, Tokyo Pro Wrestling, Inoki's very first outlaw company that went down quick. Masa Saito was number 2 guy, and Masa Saito became free agent and went to America in spring of 1967. Spent next 20 years in America, then came back to Japan after the jail time in Wisconsin too, of course. And he had a green card and everything, but Masa Saito chose pretty much come back to Japan to live. And 20 years in making, Inoki Masa Saito match happened, and they met 4 times, 4 big single match. Inoki live, Inoki in Osaka, and the jungle match fight. And that year's IWGP tournament final was also Inoki against Masa Saito. They had 4 very important single matches that year, 1987. So I guess Inoki was pretty much happy to have Masa Saito back. And those two are actually really, really close, like real good friends. But Masa Saito wanted to be heel, therefore he can be the main event, opponent against Inoki. If he was babyface, he'll never be the same, never be Inoki's status, right? If he took the heel role, he would be Inoki's best opponent. He knew it. And that was Inoki and Masa Saito's very, final good year together, 1987. Jungle fight. That's another subject for another day, huh? I mean, do you want to
do a whole episode on just that one?
Yeah, that's that was a time Inoki and New Japan was losing the primetime network deal. See, TV Asahi still carry New Japan to this day. I mean, like now, but it was never prime time again after 88. He went to the Saturday afternoon 4 o'clock, or Saturday night into Sunday morning, 1 o'clock in the morning time slot. That the New Japan didn't have very good time slot anymore. But up until 1988, New Japan Pro Wrestling was on either Friday night or Tuesday night or sometimes Monday night, but mainly Friday night, 8 o'clock. That's wrestling hour, right? But the 1988 was the final year that they had primetime, regular programming. So that parallel with Inoki's, prime time. I mean, Inoki was like clearly stepping down from the main event spot, getting old, and Riki Choshu, Fujinami in their prime, and popularity of UWF New Group outside New Japan, and New Japan was like they need to do something about it. Yeah, the Three Musketeers at the time was still rookie, if you remember. Muto, Chono, and Hashimoto still rookie around that time period.
They weren't quite the stars they became in the 90s.
No, not at all. 86, at the second year, Muto was already sent to Florida to become a star. And following year, Chono was sent to Europe. And 6 months later, Hashimoto was sent to Calgary. And when they came back in 88, 89, they start taking the main event spot. But 88, 87, 88, it was really difficult time for New Japan. Yeah.
There was also one, I think, pretty important match with Inoki and Fujinami. This was maybe Fujinami's biggest match in 88.
Yeah. August 8th, so we call it 888, 1988, August 8th, at the Yokohama Bunka Stadium. Then IWGP heavyweight champion Fujinami, challenger was Inoki. And that was a final single match those two had. Yeah, 60-minute time, no fall, no submission. They just had solid, nonstop wrestling, 60-minute. And because of the 60-minute time limit, yes, Fujinami successfully defended his IWGP title. Inoki didn't win. But that was the last serious single match for Inoki, pretty much. Yeah. And Inoki as a challenger, Fujinami as a champion. So somehow the torch was handed. Huh.
So, I was going to ask, would you say that was the big moment for Fujinami?
But he didn't beat Inoki, though.
But
Not once.
In terms of what did the fans perceive him as? Did they perceive him as changed after that Inoki match?
Pretty much, because he was, long reign IWGP champion, and he, defended title against Vader, Riki Choshu, or everybody else, and finally took Inoki as a challenger, but he didn't beat Inoki, but still defended title. That means like Inoki couldn't beat Fujinami either. So that's like giving the audience freedom of their own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Same year though, wasn't a title match, but Riki Choshu pinned Anthony Inoki clean in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. I still wonder why Inoki would have Riki Choshu pin him, but don't let Fujinami beat him. That's pretty mysterious.
Any thoughts on
If you
why
want to
that
hand
could
the
have been?
torch, if you want to hand the torch, that the champion Fujinami should go over on Inoki, but Inoki, clearly it's Inoki's choice or a company's choice that the Fujinami didn't beat him, but Inoki didn't beat him either. So I guess they both got out of the ring as winner. I don't know. Yeah.
That's the best kind of booking, though, isn't it? When
If
both
Riki
of your guys
Choshu
can
didn't beat him, Inoki, a month before that.
Choshu left with a different legacy than Fujinami for sure. So the Inoki wins, they mean something different.
Yeah. So there's a clear difference. Somebody who pinned Inoki 1, 2, 3 in 3 different occasions, but the Fujinami never beat Inoki in single match. Then again, he defended his IWGP title against Inoki for 60-minute match, which was like really historical match that people still talk about to this day because it was a great match. And it was like a music that played is they teased the that on television it was Inoki against Fujinami match was a TV special, like a 90-minute special, and that not the regular 1 hour wrestling show, but they took the special like a programming, not the wrestling night, but they just aired this Inoki Fujinami match as TV special, right? And they teased it. Is this going to be Inoki's final match? Like they start teasing Inoki's retirement. Well, he wouldn't actually retire another 10 years,
Hmm.
But as an active wrestler, he's closing this chapter, right? And sure enough, this was summer of 1988, Inoki's final big match, pretty much. And this, January of 89, Inoki announced that he's going to politics. And that summer, July of 89, he really won the election and became the, national politician. Yeah. You have upper house and, lower house. We have Sangi-in and Shugi-in and either a congressman or senator. It's just different group, right? But the Inoki won the national election, House of Councillors. That's Sangi-in. It's a lot like your upper house. But he had a position for next 6 years. Never really retired from wrestling. He came back probably once a year to have special match at Tokyo Dome, like Inoki against Hiroshi Hase or Inoki against Tenru, or one year was there Inoki against Great Muta. They did 1 year, and yeah, so until Inoki final countdown thing for like a 3-year period, and he had a retirement match in April of 1998 against people like Don Frye and Sting, and remember
Enzo Gracie.
yeah. So it was like American wrestling like Sting representing American pro wrestling, and Don Frye representing MMA, and it's Inoki had this mini tournament, 1 night tournament thing. He wanted to fight all three, and there was one match that the historical Tokyo Dome 1 January, Inoki against Big Bang Vader, and Vader almost killed Inoki with the German suplex.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a great match. That's a great match.
Yeah. That Vader told me that Inoki himself called him on the telephone.
Wow.
That's why, for one match, that Vader decided to return to New Japan. And after that, he went to WWE and ended up being with AWA. I mean, in All Japan at the end. See, Vader started with New Japan, went to UWFI, then went to WCW, and one match came back to New Japan with the match against Inoki, then back to WWE. Then after that, he was under contract with Baba, and if you remember, Stan Hansen, Big Bang Vader was a tag team at the end.
Very popular tag team. He probably had some of his best work around that time too.
I mean,
80s,
unbeatable.
90s.
Can you imagine Stan Hansen and Vader together?
Had some great matches. He had great singles matches with Kenta
Who's gonna take the whole
Kobashi.
fall? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Kobashi Akiyama. Yeah. But that's another subject for another day. But the Big Van Vader Inoki match took place. But we're talking about Inoki. So 89, he won the election and he went to national politics. Yeah. And he became a real politician. And if you remember, freeing hostage from Iraq and had a peace 95, I believe, was like a peace wrestling festival in LA, Los Angeles.
The World Peace Festival in LA. Lots of a mix of wrestlers from Japan, Mexico, all over North America.
And famous North Korean match, in the only time North Korea ever had pro wrestling, with 2 nights, 180,000 and 150,000 each night or something. And it was Inoki against Ric Flair. Oh my gosh, But
Collision
10
in
years too late,
Korea.
huh? Yeah.
Still
But
pretty
Inoki
amazing.
against Flair should have happened 15 years, sooner.
Yeah.
But
He did-
well, yeah.
Around that time, he did show up in WCW. He had a
Yeah,
match with
single
Steve
match. Yeah,
Regal,
one summer, Steve Regal. Yeah,
and he showed up for some ceremony type thing. He would come in, he would talk with Mean Gene Okerlund or something, and
yeah.
I think they gave an award to him or something. I forget the segment, but yeah, he showed
Right,
up
right.
around that time too in the States.
Right. So he was not exactly active pro wrestler. It was more like a superstar from historical superstar or something, right? Who occasionally work in the ring still.
Now, there was one moment I guess I wanted to ask you about because it was one of the opponents in Inoki's career that he dropped a win to. It was Tenryu, Genichiro Tenryu.
Right.
One
That
of the
was
very
during
few
his
people.
politician period. So he put over Riki Choshu. He ended up putting over Tenru. Yeah, it was like 97 version of Tenru, huh? Probably.
That 94.
94. Okay.
That was a big year for
Sorry about
Tenryu.
that.
That was he beat Inoki
After yeah.
and he had a match. He had a exploding barbed wire match, and he was in the Royal Rumble.
Onita.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
all in the
too.
same year.
Oh,
That's pretty.
huge. That was after SWS and WAR.
Mhm.
WAR was the second company Tenru had. They changed name to WAR, but initially it was a Wrestle and Romance or something,
Yeah.
and then Wrestle Association R or something. But the company body changed and different corporate, different company body, but they wanted to keep the initial WAR as Tenru's group. But it was actually under contract with New Japan at that year and worked all the dome shows, Tokyo Dome, Osaka Dome, and Fukuoka Dome, only big shows. But right, Inoki ended up putting Tenru over clean, but semi-retired Inoki though that time.
Right. He wasn't.
So all in all, Taiga Jitsing, Stan Hansen, Riki Choshu, and Tenru was about the only wrestler that actually pinned Inoki 1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh, wait a minute. Stan Hansen title switch was a count out finish. So Stan Hansen did 1980. Stan Hansen didn't even beat Inoki 1, 2, 3 then, but still won the NWF title.
Yeah, I think there was maybe a span of 7 or 8 years, if you look at his record, that there were no losses.
Inoki never won, never
Yeah.
lost any match. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, there's also a match from the 90s during his politician time or his political run where he had a match with Great Muta in Fukuoka Dome.
Right. Fukuoka Dome. It was interesting finish. It was sleeper hold, then pinned him.
Mhm.
Sleeper hold is to put him to sleep, right? But instead, Inoki let go of Muta and pinned him 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
It was also
Yeah, that was yeah.
it was interesting to see Inoki in a more modern setting against Muta. Definitely not a character from the 70s or 80s like we saw, but what Muta
Right.
became in the 90s.
Yeah.
Kind of
Right.
your typical dream match.
Right. That was like early 90s. The Hulk Hogan made come back to New Japan a few times. It was always Hulk Hogan against Great Muta or Great Muta and Hulk Hogan as a team went against Hellraisers, Hulk and Kensuke Sasaki's Power Warrior team. Hulk Hogan against Fujinami or somebody, but the Inoki Hulk Hogan never happened again. Hulk Hogan wanted to have a single match against Inoki again, no? But that didn't happen. Yeah.
So in 1998 or so, this is a time when he was pretty much out of wrestling, but he was also really involved with Naoya Ogawa and Hashimoto and this 97, 98 angle.
Yeah,
New Japan
it
put
was
on.
as if Inoki found a new toy in Naoya Ogawa, because he was the Olympic, gold medal guy or the World Cup winner in judo, turning pro wrestler. So, I mean, overnight, Inoki thought he could make that guy a money superstar. Yeah,
And he kind of
and
did. He
also,
became a huge superstar.
yeah, and then also took Inoki primetime, Inoki image to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he went on diet and lost, 20 pounds and made, himself real lean and good looking. Ogawa was like more like a MMA fighter and went against people like, the shoot reputation, Shinya Hashimoto, and had an infamous shoot fight. I mean, like a wrestling match turned into a fight and kind of thing. And after that, Hashimoto and Ogawa became good friends for some reason, and then they did 0-1 and Hustle together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never know, Yeah, because it was interesting that because of what took place in the ring, they became real good friends, trusting each other after that. I mean, only wrestlers understand that mentality, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. But it was 98, final year of Antonio Inoki, April what was that? April 4th, 1998. Inoki finally retired from wrestling. And
That was it.
interestingly, though, December December of 1998 was a final match for the final night of Real Tag Team Tournament thing, and Jan Baba had his final match, and he passed away in January of 1999. So both Inoki and Baba had their final matches in 1998. Both did. They started in 1960. And all the way to 1998 that they didn't really cross path again. But both Inoki and Baba had their final match in the year 1998. I don't think it was an accident.
They debuted at the same time and retired at the same time.
Right. Yeah, so that I would say there was some kind of destiny, right?
I guess so. Seems like it.
Yeah. And also there were two kings in professional wrestling in Japan. And therefore professional wrestling as pro wrestler in Japan had like a different kind evolution from originally came from America, that the wrestling became kind of different entity.
The landscape was different. The way it was laid out was different. It was shared land.
Same pro
between two
wrestling, but understanding and the perception was different. Yeah.
And the market was different because of television as well. Like in Japan, it
always
was
had network, had a good network time and network budget. Yeah.
But also a lot more access for fans to go see live shows and live events, as opposed to in the States, where unless you live in a big city.
Yeah, if you lived in Ohio, you have to wait in Ohio, right?
Right. Or you watch local companies up until a certain point.
Up until Vince McMahon's national expansion, right?
Exactly.
Or up until like 80s, that if you lived in Minnesota, that you didn't think there was another wrestling existed outside that.
Because the technology wasn't as such. It wasn't not even close to what it is today.
Justin, you grew up in upper state New York?
Yeah. Yep, Schenectady, New York, Albany area, about 2.5, 3
you
hours from New York
watched,
City.
As a kid, you only watched WWF.
Yeah, WCW would be on if I went out to Western New York, which is closer to Canada and maybe like Ohio. But yeah, it was it was exotic for me because where I grew up, it was completely it was WWF territory forever. I mean, there's an arena. It's called the Times Union Center now, unless it's changed its name. But it used to be called the Knickerbocker Arena. It opened when I lived there.
Okay, Knickerbocker Arena, right.
And WWF was one of the first ever companies to run a show there. And it's still running today. That's where they record Raw, SmackDown, and they do pay-per-views there. And
Right.
It's their backyard, essentially.
Ric Flair, WWE version of Ric Flair won the title there, too.
That's right. Knickerbocker Arena, 1992.
Yeah. Was there any local neighborhood independent wrestling where you lived?
Sure. Yeah, there were, but it was independent wrestling in the 90s was a lot different when you say indie today, has a very different meaning because
right.
And of course, I don't know what it was like around the rest of the States, but in New York, the draw of the show would be usually an old wrestler. Like one of the first indie shows I went to in the late 90s, I got a flyer when I was at a WWE house show.
Flyer.
Yeah, I got a flyer because Tito Santana, 1998, Tito Santana was going to be wrestling at the
main event.
Yeah, main event against I don't know who, but someone at the what was it? The Erie Boulevard IUE Hall, like a bingo hall sort of thing.
Right.
And yeah, so and you get a lot of
Yeah, so those little, little bitty independent company or the promotion or just simply show will pop up here and there, but never will be able to compete with big companies.
no, it was
Yeah.
WWF light.
Did you ever go to WCW oriented Meadowlands shows?
No, I never went. I
Uh,
never saw a WCW live. I saw ECW live, but I never got a chance to see WCW live. It was
right.
always a little bit
So
out
that
of
was
the
that had a
area.
lot to do with technology too. See, pay-per-views, and then people recognize WCW existed, and that's another major company. In late '90s, that the ECW really, really fought hard to become number three. And just as soon as you create the star in, Shane Douglas, the Sabu, the Rob Van Dam, the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, the Raven, they all get signed away by WCW. Then eventually go to WWF. You know,
Mhm.
that Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, they came in from Japan, New Japan to ECW. And just as soon as this Eddie Guerrero, well, at the time he was Black Tiger with no mask on, right? That Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit match was great. That those three got signed away by WCW right away. Then eventually that led to the creation of Radicals, and they went to WWF. So it was not the business deal, but that's how talented wrestlers migrated. Yeah, was interesting that not much affiliate with American companies anymore. In '90s New Japan Pro Wrestling, they created stars, American stars like Big Van Vader, Scott Norton, Bam Bam Bigelow when he was in Japan, Tony Holm. Later on, he was Ludwig Vorga with WWE, but
Mm.
he was star in Japan as Tony Holm. Don Frye was brought in, and actually it was right between that around the time like 99 2000 that Brad Reagan was training Brock Lesnar in Minnesota, and then Brock Lesnar had a choice between New Japan and WWE, and was signed by WWE. I mean, the rest of the history. So what if it's like all the what if history that the Brock Lesnar choose New Japan at the time? Well, eventually he would, come back to America and work WWE for sure. But we would have seen rookie Brock Lesnar in New Japan ring. That's another what if.
Hmm.
See, Brad Reagan's only trained wrestlers that already had a deal. He trained Leon White to become Vader, Don Frye, Tony Holmes, Scott Norton. All these guys were coached by Brad Reagan's in Minnesota and sent to New Japan and start as a main event. And interestingly enough, people like Kurt Hennig, Sean Waltman, they all show up at Brad Reagan's school because they have a wrestling ring, right? So they can practice. And they had a hands-on training. Those guys, yeah. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig lived in Minnesota, so he was always there. Yeah. Well, he had a couple. Mr. Kurt Hennig had a couple tours with New Japan too through Masa Saito, late '90s, between WWE stint and WCW.
Was that for New Japan? Yeah,
Yeah, Kurt Hennig worked New Japan a little bit. Yeah, few tours.
before WWF, right before WWF.
Between not initial Mr. Perfect against Hulk Hogan, Kurt Hennig, but Kurt Hennig signed and quit and signed and quit a few times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When he
Then
was wearing the
eventually
black
went to
tights.
and the singlet and curly hair. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Same Kurt Hennig, and eventually he went to WCW and made a lot of money. If you
Yep.
remember the Texas Rednecks.
West Texas Rednecks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but he's from Minnesota though. Yeah,
He had a handful of great matches during that time too. It's kind of overrated
yeah.
or
Oh, so
overlooked,
overlooked.
underrated. Yeah, it's overlooked.
Yeah, so overlooked. So creative. Yeah, he coached Don Fry. If you remember one spot that you get kicked in the back of your leg and twisted in a twisted bump, right by the ropes and the apron. Can you
Mhm.
picture that?
Mhm.
You get low kicks, in the back of your leg, and you twist and spins and lands from your back of your head or something. That it was clearly copied by Don Frye. He was doing that in Japan.
Huh.
hmm
Uh,
If you go back and watch the video, yeah, quite a few Mr. Perfect spot in it in Don Frye match. Interesting, huh?
let's talk more about the Don Fry match with Inoki in '98 too. This was, I think, was this his last match, or
Yeah.
this was
Inoki's
it
last match.
versus
Yeah, that
Don
was it.
Fry?
Yeah, because he wanted to beat UFC champion.
Mm-hmm. And this
Yeah.
was also during the time when K1 Pride were on the come up. There was a lot of
Oh,
pressure on Realism.
Oh,
There was a lot of
Inoki already felt the shadow and coming in, the big cloud coming in over wrestling fans because K1 and Pride, eventually MMA, will steal wrestling fans, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And that ended up happening. And in early 2000, Inoki, he sided with MMA world instead of wrestling world. And therefore, dark age of professional wrestling during that time period.
Mm.
Yeah. Because he was announced as executive producer of Pride. Then eventually they switched channel from Channel 8 Fuji TV to Channel 4 Nippon TV, and they created Inoki Bomaye show for New Year's Eve. For like a 5-6 year period, New Year's Eve, everybody's home watching TV, right?
Mhm.
Channel 4 Nippon TV, Channel 6 TBS, Channel 8 Fuji TV, all had this 5-6 hour MMA show all through the night. And Wade's wrestling, right?
Yeah, it was usually the big K1 show.
And Pride.
Pride 2 came later on, and but there was no proper pro wrestling event in the time slot for New Year's.
Yeah, for casual wrestling fans in Millennium time, a lot of things come out. Like if wrestling was real legitimate contest, like fight, MMA, and you're watching MMA fight, wrestling, if it was real, it would look like this kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if you could compare it to something today, you could compare it to Bloodsport or what Katsuyori Shibata recently did
Yeah,
in
yeah,
New
yeah.
Japan Ring. But yeah,
Yeah, right.
Inoki
So
Bomaye
MMA
was a
wasn't
good.
looking like today's UFC, more about
Mhm.
grappling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And
And people like if that the rings discovered like Emilien Fedar
mhm,
or the Milko Krakop,
or
they
Overeem.
were all flame. They were all famous, but their opponents were like Yuji Nagata, Kendo Kashin.
Yeah,
You know,
for wrestlers.
oh god. Oh, because then the Kendo Kashin Yuji Nagata was a big sacrifice, don't you think?
He was the ultimate sacrifice, I think.
Oh
Uh,
god.
but everyone has Yuji Nagata. He's still going pretty strong today, which is pretty amazing. This is 20 years ago.
50, yeah, 54 now. But I asked, I personally asked the Yuji Nagata, how he felt about it. And a couple of years ago, he said he was glad it was him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
come?
Because, other than, I mean, he could take it, but other than that, it's like that would further destroy professional wrestling if it wasn't him.
I
He
see.
now that in hindsight, I'm happy to do that, and glad that was him. Then waited for, another few years, for New Japan to create Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura and Katsuyori Shibata. That entirely new generation professional wrestling superstars. So the Yuji Nagata felt that he was the bridge of that.
I
And he
mean,
had his own reign. Yeah, he had his own reign as a IWGP champion.
it's a good point too. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse for pro wrestling if it wasn't
Yeah,
Yuji.
if somebody like Inoki went in or aged Ricky Joshi went in
Gosh,
and got
yeah.
beat, or aged
Takara
Fujinami went
again.
in and got beat. Oh God, they destroyed Takada's reputation. He never came back to pro wrestling after that.
He became a
And now
comedian.
he's on TV a lot, but always a former MMA fighter. Never, his caption always say former MMA fighter,
He
not
never
former
won an
pro
MMA
wrestler.
fight.
I don't know, but the TV caption always say whenever Nobuhiko Takada comes on to this, like a late night shows, it's like always former MMA fighter Nobuhiko Takada. Never announce him as former pro wrestler. Maybe his people's making sure that's his title now.
Oh god.
Former MMA fighter instead of former pro wrestler. Whereas Akira Maeda comes on to TV show a lot now that the 64, 65-year-old, Akira Maeda comes on to funny comedian show now, but he talks about his, street fight and stuff. Yeah. So he carries his image now, old image.
It's funny because somebody like Kazushi Sakuraba considers himself a pro wrestler.
Yeah. But
when
when
on
he
those
was,
kind of shows.
when Sakuraba was regular pro wrestler with UWFI, he was first match guy. He was a rookie. During the time Sakuraba became the real superstar, it was MMA ring against Hoist Gracie and other Gracies that the wrestling fans wanted to beat. Gracie is like a real bad. That's like a real bad taste in the mouth for pro wrestling fans.
Enemy family.
Yeah,
Beating everybody.
Hickson
beat everybody in Shuto.
Yeah, and then beat Takada in 5 minutes in 2 different occasions. And he also had one match against Masakatsu Funaki, and he beat him too. Oh, guy destroyed wrestling. Yeah, and New Japan at one point wanted to book Hickson Gracie at the Tokyo Dome. Almost happened, but never took place. And Ricky Choshi was going to have a single match against Hickson Gracie. That never took place.
What year was that supposed to take place?
Oh, 2000-ish, 2001-ish, maybe.
Ricky Choshi, wow.
Against Hickson Gracie, can you imagine?
I mean,
I'm glad it didn't happen.
It would have had to have been a shoot fight. It would have.
Oh no, Hickson, Gracie only do that kind. Never work.
Ricky Choshi was pretty old by then. He wasn't.
Yeah, but the Ricky Choshi was a good 50 pounds heavier than Hickson Gracie, though.
That's true.
Probably never mattered. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, something happened and backed out something, or the money wasn't right, and Hickson wouldn't work, and that never took place. But the New Japan was able to bring in the boss, what's his name? Early Pancras fighter.
Boss Rutten?
Boss Rutten, yeah. Boss Rutten came in, they did pro wrestling match.
That's right.
And also, New Japan brought in guys like Kimo, early
Kimo,
UFC star.
Kevin Randleman.
Yeah, they all came and did the pro wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them.
They didn't want to do it. Yeah, they didn't want to do it in the States. But in Japan, they would, go into pro wrestling and have MMA-ish pro wrestling match. Yeah, they would do that.
We saw a lot more of that type in what would become called Hustle. It was the offshoot of the.
Oh God! Then
stage.
Again, it was turned off because they were announcing that this is not a real fight. This is like a fighting opera. It's like what a turn off. It's like you don't, call it. It's a magic. It's not real. It's like then who would you want to watch the show? Why would you want to watch the show? It's so announced. No, this is an entertainment, and this is a real dumb way to promote the show. I mean, in my opinion, certain mystique, some, that the unknown part should remain, people know what wrestling is, but they don't say it's all fake. And people believe in certain portion of pro wrestling, even to this day. I do. Pro wrestling is a lot more real than the people think. Agree?
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
the longer you watch,
Inoki, there were a couple other things. So we talked a little bit about Inoki Bomoye. That was there were 6?
6 years in a row? Yeah.
Yeah.
2003, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so around there. Oh, such a dark period. I'm trying to forget. And 2007 was the year I got sick. So, I thought, I had cancer and I thought I was going to retire, Yeah. And 2007 was the year that, Bam Bam Bigelow died, and my friend Mike Awesome Gladiator died, Carl Gotch died, And then Chris Benoit thing happened, and such a dark year for me,
Yeah, 2007 was an eventful year for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and in this time, Inoki he was established out of the ring as Inoki, the personality, Inoki, the hostage negotiator, Inoki, the businessman.
And the Inoki restaurants in town. Yeah.
That's right. I've been there.
Yeah.
I forgot
Oh,
to.
you have? Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Inoki
I have
bar?
pictures. Yeah, yeah. Before I moved back to the
Yeah.
States, I actually went out to the Inoki bar in Shinjuku. Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of those bars that the Inoki restaurant, Inoki bar, but the Inoki himself was seldom there, Whereas, see, if you go to Kero Khan's bar, he's there every night. If you go to Bo Nakano's bar, she's actually there. You know what I'm saying? But for Inoki's restaurant, it's like Inoki's never there.
Yeah, it had like a TGI Fridays feel, and there was like a little ring
Yeah, right.
inside.
Or the Planet Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. They had, gosh, what was it? I remember they had the Ichnisanda salad. Salad in Japan, it's
all the
salada.
items on menu, something to do with Inoki.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they would come out. The hostess would come out, and they would say the Ichnisanda. They would do the whole Inoki speech, and then give you
For you.
free towering French fry or some shit. I don't know.
And the wrestling ropes, like that
Yes.
the sections all closed like wrestling ring, like wrestling ropes.
Yeah, very
Inoki's
gimmicky.
gowns and the Inoki shoes and Inoki costumes and all framed on the wall.
There's a cartoon Inoki that greets you as you walk in, like a sculpture almost.
Okay. And buy this and buy that, and all the Inoki items on sale. I mean,
Sure.
the
T-shirt.
merchandise,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
everything. This is more commercial than any like a wrestler's bars, Yeah.
Yeah, it's like imagine if there were, it's like a WWE kind of bar. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, there was WWE restaurant in New York once.
Yep,
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, there's also a
Much like Hard
WCW.
Rock.
WCW
Oh,
place
did that
in
too.
Vegas.
That
Or they're
too.
supposed to be.
That too. Right. But those restaurants never last that long.
No, they never do.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan's beach bar is happening right now because he's there a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, is the Inoki bar
I
still, or
think
not the
that
bar,
the
the restaurant still?
Inoki restaurant closed down in the middle of pandemic about a year
Yeah.
ago, I think.
I'm sure that's
yeah.
the case for a lot of places.
Yeah. And also now that the Inoki is really getting weak right now. And yeah. So now that the people realize how much they love the Inoki now. Yeah. See, he was a hero. He was an enemy at one point, and he was against wrestling at one point, but he still is hero today. Yeah. Very interesting because he was always in front of audience. He was in front of eyes of general public for the past 50 years for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a
Since
big
the
star.
early days, and such a connection to Rikidozan,
Society.
to society,
Yeah.
beginning of pro wrestling, integration of pro wrestling around the world from Japan into the US, into Europe, into the connection he has with Brazil.
To regular TV, to satellite TV, to your closed circuit, to pay-per-view, to now the streaming service. Inoki, in the 70s, Inoki did such 70s things. Inoki during 80s did such 80 things, and 90s Inoki did such a 90s things, and Millennium, he was Millennium Inoki. He really kept reinventing himself. Yeah. If not a fighter in the ring, he became producer of the like MMA producer. So he was on top of this trend at all time.
He always had an influence. He always had his hand, or the sense of him was inside of all of what he was doing, what was going on in pro wrestling at the time.
Yeah, and then also there was the time he actually lived in America. Right after this 98 retirement, he moved to LA and got green card in 2 weeks. What a politician, right?
Nice.
I mean, like for immigrant, years to have green card, right?
Sometimes almost 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, but he got his green card in 2 weeks because biography and and not just one, but the series of biography and books are written on him. So they just honored him green card right away. Yeah, I spoke with LA lawyer how it was done. It was like a piece of cake that they just stamped Inoki's passport, kept the Japanese passport, but they gave him green card right away.
Wow.
Kind of slick, huh? Yeah.
So this is where he started up the first LA
Inoki
dojo.
Dojo in LA,
Inoki
right?
Dojo, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with his daughter, who also moved to America. Yeah.
So who were the original trainees at the Inoki Dojo in Los Angeles?
Oh wow. It became like a dormitory for everybody, like a young, y- y- blonde hair. CM Punk came and trained. Samoa Joe was there. Kia, that Amazing Kong was there. Young, I almost said Daniel Bryan, but Brian Danielson, young Daniel Bryan, came and lived there at the dojo. And there are so many. CM Punk already debuted in independent scene, but he came to LA Dojo to train again. Originally, Brian Danielson was trained under Shawn Michaels San Antonio, the Texas Wrestling Association gym, but he came to LA and retrain again. Samoa Joe was also already an independent wrestler, but came to LA Dojo to train again. And a lot of wrestlers, came, and they made a dormitory out of that place. Very interesting period.
Wasn't Nakamura there too?
Yeah, Nakamura. Yeah, rookie Nakamura came and spent time there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. And I
yeah.
think
The-
the UFC fighter Machida, Yoto Machida.
Ryoto Machida. Yeah, he was there. Right, right, right. I
So
think the idea was to train both MMA fighter and pro wrestler, and let the fighter choose, the profession, because
how much of a
training are the same.
yeah, how much of a connection does the Inoki Dojo have to the current New Japan Dojo, if any?
Uh, today's LA dojo and Inoki's LA dojo are the two different things. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Inoki sold New Japan Pro Wrestling 2006-ish to Ukes. Then Ukes later on sold New Japan to Bushi Road. And now it's under Bushi Road Capital. Right.
Mm-hmm. Ukes is
But
the
that they
video
kept
game company, and Bushi
right,
Road is
right.
the card
Another
game.
yeah, and also a video game company. The
Mhm.
bigger one, bigger than Ukes.
Mhm.
But then again, that's a good to have ownership like that. In the New Japan, that the King of Sports lion logo remains. It's a still King of the Sports, that strong style New Japan. And New Japan have this 50th year anniversary this year.
50
Both New Japan
years.
and All Japan for that matter. Yeah. All Japan and New Japan both, opened their door in year 1972. It's 50 years now. Oh my gosh.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah. That was, and we could probably still go on. So I guess if there's any, if we missed any topics that
Oh,
you guys
we'll take
wanna,
questions.
of
And
course.
also, we're going to start the Giant Baba episode, the Giant Baba series. We'll look at the wrestling world from Baba's side of the story.
Mhm. The King
Because
and the
yeah,
Royal
because
Road.
we've been looking at the Japanese wrestling history from New Japan Inoki side of it, right?
Mhm.
But there's always flip side, like a vinyl record, side A and side B. I'm not saying Inoki's a side A and Baba's side B, but some people love album side B. Good songs are always in side B, but it's kind of like a vinyl record that you need two kings to have Japanese wrestling history. And we'll look at Japanese wrestling history from Baba's side for the next episode on.
How about it's like a double record? One record for Inoki, one
Right,
record
like
for
a white
Baba.
album. Yeah,
Yes.
white album. Yeah.
White album. So
Yeah.
we'll look at it
That's
from
good.
different. We have
Yeah,
to
because it's
because
a national. Because if there was no National Wrestling Alliance, there would have been no WWE,
Mhm. And there would
right?
probably be
Yeah,
no All Japan either.
right, right. And they were clear affiliated with NWA and establishment. And if
Mhm.
there was no establishment, Inoki wouldn't have fought that hard. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And he had influence on a whole nother area, but just as important area of Japanese pro wrestling.
and Japanese pop culture.
Mhm.
See, Baba was on movies and TV years and years before Inoki was famous.
Mhm.
So, and also was a giant baseball player, pitcher. Yeah.
Yeah, much different story. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So if you're not an All Japan or Giant Baba fan, you should still go into these details in history of All Japan side. That he had Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta and Dick Bayer Destroyer and the connection with America, Dory and Terry Funk, Harley Race, Nick Bockwinkel, all these existing American superstar had affiliated with All Japan and Giant Baba. And
Abdullah
most
and the
wrestler
Sheik,
Abdullah and Sheik and Stan Hansen at the end.
Bruiser Brody.
And of course, Bruiser Brody choose Giant Baba at the end, and Bruiser Brody of all people choose All Japan ring and Jumbo Tsuruta to get to put over 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. Bruiser Brody doesn't get pinned all that often, right?
Almost
And
never.
Almost never. And also, if you ask any historical American wrestling superstar, they'll tell you Giant Baba is a better promoter than Antonio Inoki. Really.
Yeah, he had a very good reputation. He was very trustworthy among a lot of
Yeah. That
pro
kind of
wrestlers
thing.
of the age. And yeah, it's going to be a fresh perspective. But if you
And also, a real old-fashioned wrestling company like Mr. and Mrs. Baba runs it. Yeah.
yeah, mom and pop style,
At its best.
not as corporate as New Japan would become.
Right. But wrestling business, work better with that environment sometimes.
Mhm. Especially with the
Yeah.
foreigners, I think.
Yeah, I guess. People like late Steve Williams, Dr. Death, was saying that he enjoyed All Japan a lot better than New Japan environment.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Stan Hansen retired there. He left his career there.
Worked 20 years of his career. Yeah. And
So
well, look at the business from different perspective. Yeah.
mhm. And once when you can see the whole picture with that perspective, it becomes a very interesting story.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. So how can we reach you online, Fumi-san?
On Twitter, Fumihiko Dayo, Fumihiko Dayo, Fumihiko Dayo on Twitter, or just Fumisaito on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, Fumisaito 2001, but I'm not there all that much. Send me message before you friend me on Facebook.
And I'm at Justin M. Knipper on Twitter, KNIPPER. If you have questions, comments on anything Inoki related or not Inoki related, that's okay. Send them to us via social media or Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to our free feed on FightK Media via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Downcast, Stitcher, etc. But this is it. We finally did it. We did the Inoki 5-part series. I think it's unprecedented.
We
But
probably missed something, though. But
yeah. Reach
fine.
out if you want us to talk about something that we might have missed, of course. But hey, now there's 6-7 hours of Inoki material in English out there for everybody. So yeah, we did it. Whew. All right, next week we'll get into the Giant Baba, probably 5-part series as well, if not more. But we'll see for next week. So
all right.
For Fumi.
So long from Tokyo.
Write that down, Fumisaito.